As we near the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, we're taking a look at how much that day impacted how our country operates now. Many security measures have been implemented since then, but are we safer today? ABC's Alex Perche has the latest.
In the 20 years since the 9/11 terror attacks, air travel and security have changed drastically. In fact, before the attacks, there wasn't even TSA. Today, checkpoints and security screenings are the norm. Elizabeth Newman is a national security expert for ABC News.
We got better at physically screening you as you came through the airport. We became more agile and adaptable as the threat changed.
Like with Richard Reed, just months after 9/11, Reed boarded an American Airlines flight from Paris to Miami with homemade bombs hidden in his shoes. Crew members and passengers noticed him trying to light the fuse and restrained him.
Afterwards, we all had to start taking our shoes off to go through security.
Limiting and taking out liquids and gels during TSA screenings, that came in 2006 after British police discovered a transatlantic terror plot. Another major change, the creation of no-fly lists.
If somebody is on that list, they don't even board a plane to come to the United States.
There were also highly criticized security tools. The Patriot Act expanded law enforcement surveillance, but also authorized indefinite detention of non-citizens the government deemed a national security threat, and gave law enforcement permission to search property and records without a warrant.
I would argue it was a necessary evil for the short term.
Since its passage in 2001, there have been several legal challenges, courts ruling a number of its provisions unconstitutional. And a key part of the Patriot Act, which allowed for surveillance of telephone records, expired last year. But the big question is, 2 decades later, with all these changes, are we safer? A recent report from the United Nations shows terror groups ISIS and Al-Qaeda have had growth in Africa. ISIS also finding safe havens in Iraq and Syria. And with the recent collapse of the Afghan government, top U.S. military officials warned the country could become a cradle for terrorism, potential plots stateside or against Americans. Experts telling us a key will be remaining vigilant.
So the challenge in the space that we're in post 20 years post 9/11, terrorism budgets are on the downslope. They're not increasing, they're decreasing. The workload hasn't decreased.
Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
All right, Alex, thanks for that. And joining us now are 2 9/11 first responders, Gary Smiley, a retired FDNY rescue paramedic, and Dr. Darren Porcher, a former NYPD sergeant. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining us today and for your heroic actions on that day.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Gary, I'd like to start with you. What goes through your mind as we come up on this 20th anniversary of these attacks, and how will you spend Saturday?
It's kind of hard to believe that it's been 20 years since the attacks. Every year since 9/11, I've spent the anniversary at the World Trade Center site at the museum. That's where some of my friends remain that haven't been identified, and that's the place that I feel I need to be every year. I join some friends and families of the fallen and listen to the names and just reflect on how fortunate I am that I came out of there that day alive, while so many of my brothers and sisters and so many of the people that just went to work that day did not have the ability to go home.
And Dr. Porcher, how about you? How do you feel coming up on this anniversary?
I can't believe it's been 20 years. I revert back to that same day on 9/11. I was a sergeant working in the Manhattan South area, and I had a contingent of other officers that were deployed down to that World Trade Center complex. I saw carnage and a magnitude that I've never seen before. I'm a former Army officer, and what I saw on that day far exceeded what I've ever seen in the past. That being said, I think that it's necessary for us as Americans to pay homage to the people that we've lost on 9/11 and understand moving forward that this is something that could never happen again.
And Gary, I imagine this is also a very difficult memory for you because you saw that plane hit the second tower. You were trapped and buried for 2 hours by the wreckage of the North Tower. What do you think was the most impactful part for you of that day?
Initially, I'm carrying a woman across the street when she was yelling plane, plane, and telling her that I understood a plane had hit the North Tower, not knowing that she was looking south and saw the second plane coming in. And I threw myself over her to protect her. I mean, having to reestablish another triage area, having to drive down Vesey Street towards West Street because I knew that was the staging area because I was there during the 1993 bombings, and driving over bodies, because those were the people that had come out of Flight 11. And then just watching people jump out of the buildings. I don't remember all of it, but I was told I watched 37 people jump. I do remember a couple that held hands and jumped. And then, you know, just the constant battle that's been for 20 years of fighting illness. I mean, I fought through multiple illnesses to stay at work and keep doing the job that I've done since I was 19 years old. And now in my retirement, fighting with my job as the World Trade Center liaison for the fire FDNY Paramedics and Fire Inspectors Union. I mean, I fight for the sick guys and girls, the ones that, you know, are not here anymore, or the ones that are sick. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that although after 6 sinus surgeries and asthma and everything else that's wrong with me, I'm still able to do that and to fight for them. I mean, I survived the collapse of the South Tower, the North Tower, being buried, being in the hospital. So I owe it to these men and women to keep their memory going, and by that, fighting for those that are still alive, that are sick, to make sure that they are taken care of. The biggest issue we have right now is the fact that the NYSERS pension system in New York City denies 70% of my FDNY EMS paramedics and EMTs their disability pensions, when on the fire and police side, the denial rate is less than 18%. So that's my life's goal right now. I fight every day to make sure that that changes, that the legislators understand that 20 years later, we still have that problem, and people with cancer and respiratory disease, you know, deserve a disability pension that has been, you know, acknowledged to them by law. In 2005, the World Trade Center presumption bill was signed by Governor Pataki. It clearly states what they're entitled to, and they don't get it, and we don't know why. And, you know, I constantly call on legislators, and now that we have a new governor, Governor Hochul, who I hope to meet with later this week, and soon to be Mayor Eric Adams, we hope that things will finally change, because it's been too long. And these heroes deserve what is due them.
They sure do. And we know it was a big step when Congress approved funding for the continuation of that 9/11 Victims Fund. But of course, clearly, still more work is left to be done here. Dr. Porcher, I know that you, when the towers hit, you were tasked with commandeering city buses, having citizens exit the buses so you could get officers down to the World Trade Center. You were also close when the towers collapsed as well. So what sticks out to you about that day and where you are now?
What sticks out to me was the bravery and the selfless service of the officers that fell under my command and the executive branch. It was somewhat interesting in that the executive branch didn't have a formidable plan to address a disaster of such a great magnitude of 9/11. So in many instances, you had officers that were trying to find their way based on the situation. So it's just taking consideration when that smoke cloud went up, I should say dust cloud, you really couldn't see what direction you were going in. So you had to rely on your inner spirit as to what you can do, what was best suited for that particular situation. And it was just so unfortunate. I lost one of my coworkers, Glenn Pettit, great, phenomenal young man. He lost his life saving people in that night in that tower down at the World Trade Center. There was another individual, one of my coworkers, Officer Smith. He lost his wife, Moria Smith, who was an officer down in that World Trade Center complex. And there are many videos that have been placed or erected that show her saving people, putting her life on the back burner and putting the common citizen's life in front. That being said, as we move forward, a lot of officers experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. Fortunately, we've had the Zadroga Act that's come in to assist 9/11 responders. But as we move forward, I think that we need to understand that this was a catastrophic incident that can never happen again. And fortunately, we have bifurcated our security in 2 components, meaning the physical man security that maintains that omnipresence at locations that can be potential terrorist targets, and the technological innovations such as the camera systems that are lining the downtown area of Manhattan. I think that puts us in a better place, and we're now in a more proactive space as opposed to reactive.
All right, Gary Smiley, Dr. Darren Porcher, again, thank you both for sharing your story with us today, and thank you both for your heroic actions on that day 20 years ago.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
It's our pleasure. And as America reflects on the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, ABC News and ABC News Live will have live coverage. 9/11, 20 years later, America Remembers airs this Saturday starting at 8 a.m. Eastern.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.